hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real, raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely am. Whoa, what up, folks? Holy shit, we're back. 2-week break. We are excited. We got a banger of a guest tonight coming back. We're going to have an awesome conversation. Cannot wait. But before we get there, I mean, I got chills, man. I'm so excited to do this. I love doing this. Maddie, how are you doing, my man?
I am doing fantastic. Florida's amazing. Had a nice little beach week, so you know that's always fun,
Oh,
man.
I love the beach. Calms the soul.
Oh, dude, man, when you're like 10 minutes away from one of the better beaches in America, which by the way, I know there's an asterisk there because like the best beaches aren't in America, but for America, I'm in some pretty good beaches and having a good time. And dude, this real estate thing is wild. There are some there's a lot of concentrated wealth in this area of Florida. And so it's been kind of fun hopping into houses and just doing a little bit of dream building. I mean, I don't really have a desire for some $20 million mansion, but it is a lot of fun to see and just talk to people and talk to owners. And it's an interesting kind of throwback to what we do because you just find out that you never know who you're going to talk to. And the stuff that people have done to get them extreme wealth is wild. It's really cool meeting some of those people, some interesting folks. What about you, man?
Bro, 2 weeks of vacation, went to Austin, Texas, made one of the best tasting briskets I've ever made with my brother-in-law, pellet smoker. Smoked that some bitch for like 18 hours, let it rest for 4 or 5. It was delicious. Then my other boy came, known him for as long as you almost, and we played a shit ton of golf, 36 holes of golf 4 days in a row, and that was real nice. I don't get to play golf as much as I would like to, but we played some of the finest courses in San Diego. Actually got to play Torrey Pines, where they have had multiple
Wow.
U.S. Opens and the Farmers Insurance Open every year. Listen, you play the front nine, and I shit you not, you're like, holy crap, this is just a cow field. You could put this golf course in any town, USA, like just a flat field. And you're like, I paid what? I mean, so regular round, it's like $275. And I'm like, I'm not paying $275 for golf. So Twilight, I got that bad boy for $85. But it's still old school because it's a public course. So I had to show up at 10 a.m. to get a 3 p.m. Twilight because you can get a tee time in advance, but they book out months. So I didn't even think about that. But you can show up to the course every day and get on a waiting list. So I got on the waiting list. We went off. After 9 holes, I was like, seriously, this is what people are excited about? But then, bro, the back 9, it's all along the cliffs of California. You get this like really interesting ocean view perspective because I've played at Pebble Beach and down near Monterey and all these other beautiful courses, but you're right on the ocean. Here, you're 250, feet up looking over the ocean. Amazing views, fantastic time. But I'm back and ready. I'm excited to talk to Sam. Let's get to this, brother. Let's do our introductions and roll, man.
All right, I love it. Well, hey, this is wild. I'm remembering so many things just playing golf with you out in San Diego. But I think we're going to be in for an amazing conversation tonight. And here's why. We'll get to the fun stuff here. But first, you got to know we're talking to the real deal. Sam is not just, when he says CEO, anybody, listen, for $14 in Vistaprint, you can put CEO on your business card. This guy actually knows what he's doing. He started as a paper boy, and we all know old school. I feel like there's got to be a secret society of people who have started out as paper boys and ended up as CEOs, because I keep hearing that theme. But the work ethic is definitely there. He went from paper boy all the way up through university. He became a headhunter in the financial world. He did that for 10 years. Very, very successful. Was ready to move on, wanted to get into tech. He started building tech companies. He did that for another 10 years, worked his way all the way to a point where he was the managing director of wish.com, which is, of course, a website we've all heard of. He finally decided, hey, it's time to step out on my own. I think he may have done that maybe in the past before, but now he is the CEO and co-founder with Snoop Dogg of Shiller. And so we're going to be talking about that. But first, we want to get into our classic questions and find out how he got to the seat he's in today. A little fun fact, though, soccer fan, Liverpool. I'm sorry, Sam. I do not know a lot about soccer, so I can't really resonate there. But I do know this. Soccer fans are hardcore. And so I know you're definitely a big fan. Here's really what you have to know. Normal people don't stay up till 3 a.m. in Spain and talk to us for another hour and a half, 2 hours. And so that's really that's a little fun fact. Last time he was in Spain 19 years ago for his bachelor party, pretty sure he was up at 3 a.m. then. But that was a very different set of circumstances. So yeah, man, we're excited to have you. Welcome to the show. Let's get into it.
Yeah, great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And again, it's crazy time. I appreciate it. We're just going to go right into it, Sam. World famous midlife crisis question. How did you get to that beautiful seat in Spain that you're sitting in this morning? Give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 being your younger year stories. Love to hear about influences, that paper route. That stuff is very interesting to us. Episode 2 is going to be your professional career, that headhunting that you talked about. And then 3, the aha moment where you're like, screw it, I'm all in tech entrepreneur. I found Web3. Now Snoop Dogg's my boy and we're building something. Cannot wait to hear this because this is going to be a fascinating journey.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm a firm believer that, everything you do is, all the dots connect eventually, and there's just hundreds and thousands of layers of your life experience. But my life started in the UK, 1978, born into a family of 3 other kids, me plus 2 others, older brother, younger sister. And my father was a man of the cloth. He was a vicar. So although my dad's very savvy, I actually think he would have done very well in business. He's from Liverpool, quite a tough upbringing. Was originally an electrician, but became a vicar later in life. And my mum was a social worker, so she helped a lot with kids who, maybe fallen off the rails and trying to get them before they get sort of too old in their teenage years where they go down the wrong path. So, my family we're always living in a house, where, we try to help people one way or other, and there's always people showing up needing something. So I think from a very young age, I was always around people. And, I think that gives you a certain amount of confidence to read situations and so on. So I lived, in the Lake District, which is, north of Liverpool and Manchester and things like this. Beautiful part of the UK, very, very quiet existence. Loved football from an early age, but, quite a simple upbringing, good schools, good family, this kind of thing. And I remember when I was 10 years old, my dad said to us, he's flying to Hong Kong to take an interview. And we'd never, as a family, been on an airplane before. We used to get the ferry to France or go camping in Cornwall. And this is like 1987. And my dad said, there's an opportunity come up to be a vicar in Hong Kong. And I had no idea, what or where Hong Kong was. But sure enough, 10 days later, he comes back and he says, look, I got the job. We're moving to Hong Kong. And
wow.
this was just so incredibly foreign as a concept. But sure enough, age 10 years old, we packed off, and as a family we moved to Asia. And I can still remember landing at Kai Tak Airport and the smells and the Cantonese characters on the buildings and everything that goes with visiting a new place. And now I take for granted, but that was me at 10. We had 4.5 really great years in Hong Kong. Went to an expatriate school called KG5, and I felt very at home in Hong Kong, which is probably the most entrepreneurial city in the world, in terms of people getting things done at incredible speed, truly entrepreneurial place in a way that US is, but just at a different kind of pace. And we had a great time there, but I think my dad felt that he didn't want us to grow up as expat brats for our whole life. So when I got to 14 and my brother was 16 and my sister was a bit younger, we moved back to the UK, to the north of England, where we were from. And it was a huge shift. We went to a place called Salford in Manchester to a big old church and parish that my dad was asked to go and join. But it was a huge culture shock to go from Hong Kong, where you're in the cricket club, expat school, ski trips, all this sort of stuff, to go to quite a rough part of the UK. And I think this was a really formative time for me, because you're suddenly thrown into a school where everyone's got relationships, no one really cares where you've just come from, and you just have to learn to adapt. It's like you're 14, but you're already adapting into a totally new environment. And I actually think in hindsight, it was a blessing that we did that, because these are skills which I've taken with me my whole life. The ability to find a connection with someone extremely quickly is probably my number one skill I have. Is you put me on a plane or a bus or a train with anyone on the planet, I'll find it in 1 or 2 minutes, something that we can connect on. And this is my one superpower. I think I can beat anyone on.
I love that, because that's our superpower as well. So we're going to get along real well.
Yeah. No, I'm sure I can. I've played Sawgrass, not in person, on computer games many times, so I know some of the holes you're describing. And as part of that, I always wanted, when I was 14, we moved back to the UK. I always wanted a paper round, and I think it was a mixture of financial independence and just having a routine. And so I had a paper round for 2 years in Manchester, getting up at 6 a.m. delivering 60 papers or whatever it was. And I missed 2 days in 2 years of sick, and I was very proud of that. And at Christmas time, I took a bit of Hong Kong with me. I always printed these nice labels, put on the newspaper, and I said, "Wishing you Merry Christmas from your paper boy. I missed 1 day this year." And I'd hoover up on the tips. So, I think you start to take these things you learn on your travels, you take them into your business life. sadly, part of that 2-year period, someone came and punched me in the face and stole my bike. So there was a few challenging periods where you're reminded where you live. But on the whole, these were good years, and I got my next job just after that, working in a retail department store called House of Fraser, which is a big chain of big superstores. And I was working in the kind of Ralph Lauren section, So this was an interesting experience, in retail. And anyway, I studied my A levels in Manchester, and I went to university in Manchester. Chose to not go to another city because I was dating a girl at the time, and I prioritized that over life experience, which was probably a mistake, as my dad told me many times. But I decided to stay close to home, and really my first entrepreneurial venture came up in 1999 when I was in the first year of uni. And that was Manchester United, who were the local team. They won the treble, which was three tournaments: the Champions League, the League, and the FA Cup, which is a big deal. And just through my social circle, I had access to people like Ryan Giggs, David Beckham, and others. They were like, they lived in where I lived, they drank where we drank, and they were in our social circle. And as soon as they won the treble, I never forget, someone said to me, "We should do something as a business to celebrate this moment." And I remember assembling together the video footage of each of these key goals, key moments that won these trophies. And one was Beckham, one was Giggs, one was Solskjaer. And I said to somebody in the social circle, if I can create an oil painting for each moment that won these trophies, could you get the player to sign the prints? And he went, no, 100%, we can do that. We'll have to give them some prints or give them, the original or whatever we do, but they'll do it. So I started to track down the most famous artists in the UK. And I went to an art shop. I said, is there a brochure that shows you all the artists? And sure enough, an art shop in the UK, they're members of the Fine Art Guild. So they gave me a pamphlet, and I searched. And I found about 8 artists that focus on sport. And I saw this one artist called Terence Gilbert. And he paints for the Queen. He paints horses for the Queen. He paints, all kinds of motion through oil. And I rang this guy up, and I just said to him, listen, you don't know me, but I'm doing a project with 3 soccer players. Would you meet me so I can explain to you the project? He said, yeah, come to Maidenhead tomorrow and we'll talk about it. So we drove a few hours down south from Manchester to Maidenhead, and I met this very, very quirky artist called Terence Gilbert. And he quite an incredible man, but I showed him these videos of these 3 goals, and I said, look, my idea is to make 3 individual pieces and sell them as a collection of 3. And I think there's loads of Man United fans around the world. So he took a pencil out of his cupboard and he watched the video and he started to sketch the goal. And when you see a real master or magician doing something, it's an incredible moment. You just realize you're in the company of a genius. And anyway, he said he charged me £2,500 per piece of art. I found a way to pay it with my partner, business partner. And anyway, sure enough, 2 weeks later, we got these incredible 3 oil paintings of these 3 moments. And we went to show them to the players. The players agreed to sign a few hundred of them. And then we called these the Treble Collection. And we put pamphlets all outside the stadium. We sent brochures to all the supporters clubs around the world, and we sold a lot of these things. And this was a really interesting experience, for me, because it was putting something together. It was going from zero, total blank sheet of paper, to building something that was packaged and ready. And the only downside was trying to sell art after that was just like hopeless. Like Manchester United is the biggest sports team in the world, or one of them. And, they just had their best year in their history. And I was in Manchester with signed stuff, and anything after that, we just couldn't sell. So, but it was a great experience. And anyway, as part of my degree, I did a year out, which also I put down as a great life experience. part of my degree you got to do in industry, and I applied for one of 12 spots at Marks and Spencer, which is a very famous British retailer, and it was in their head office in Baker Street, London. And as fate would have it, they put me in this new department called e-commerce, which no one really knew what it was back then. You know, it's the late 90s, and so I was at head office of the best retailer in the country, and they were learning how to sell online through this thing called the internet. So I did that for a year. I completed my degree, and then you know, through some advice from a few people, including my family, I thought, let's go and now join a proper company. And so I
all right, so we're gonna jump in here.
Yeah.
Time out, because that was, I don't know, man. I got chills. You're like growing up in the same social circles. People are freaking out that you're just pounding beers with Beckham and all of these superstars. And that's how it was back then, right? Like, you just grew up in the same neighborhood and you got to go and hang out. But we have so many questions. Maddie, go ahead.
And let's also just say this. All right, Sam, here's just fun fact. We have asked this question hundreds of times at this point, okay? And said, give us Star Wars Episode 1. I cannot think of somebody who has given a more thorough background at this point and just made it enjoyable. What a great story. Most people say like four sentences, then start talking about the professional career, and we got to like try to pull things out. This is the complete opposite. So I'm going to go all the way back. So moving to Hong Kong at 10 years old, right? Learning kind of what was going on with that. Any big takeaways from the experience of going from the UK to Hong Kong and back that you think really shaped maybe who you are today as a person? Any big take, whatever it might be, what influences? I don't know if it was a person or whatnot.
No, I've got an amazing one actually, and that is when I was about 7, my dad got me my first Liverpool football kit when we lived in the UK, and he's from Liverpool, and Liverpool very, very good in the 1980s when this was. And when I went to Hong Kong as a 10-year-old, I got more into Liverpool. You know, it became almost part of my identity to cling on to your identity back in the UK. So if you could see my bedroom in Hong Kong, you wouldn't see any paint on the walls for posters of these players. And everyone that came out to visit us from the UK, they would always bring, you know, copies of newspapers, football stickers, and so on. But I used to, when I was about 11 or 12, I used to write to the club. I used to write to Liverpool Football Club. And I used to say to them, you know, I'm in Hong Kong, you know, is there any way I can be mascot, you know, one day? I'd love to be mascot, which is when you walk on the pitch with your with the captain. And the club would always write back. It's an amazing thing about Liverpool Football Club. So I remember getting these letters in the post, you know, where and it says on the envelope, Liverpool Football Club. It's very official. And you open it up, and it was signed by my, you know, one of my favorite players, who was the manager at the time, Sir Kenny Dalglish. And it would always say, Sam, thanks for supporting us in Hong Kong, and sorry we can't have you as mascot this time. But anyway, this would go back and forth, and I'll tell you how this story ends 20 years later, a little later in this chat. But I think this was one thing that I just sort of clung on to, you know, when I was over there. Yeah, and of course there's a lot of Liverpool fans over there. But
yeah, no, I can't wait to hear that story. And it goes to show that even though you're in a new place, it really brought that passion out, right? You found a passion at a very young age, and there's something to be said for that. Maddie?
Yeah, man, I love that. And then, I mean, I loved how you were talking about, for example, the paper route started as just a goal for some independence, some financial independence. But what I loved is how you said just you learn the power of routine. And one of the consistent themes I've seen with people who are successful is, you know, everybody thinks there's like this kind of this magic bullet, so to speak. But really, it's just being consistent. Like you said, you missed 2 days out of the whole time. Being consistent and showing up is so much of the battle. And I think a lot of people put more energy into trying to reinvent the wheel than just doing the play you're supposed to do every day. Any thoughts on that? Anything from that? Did that work ethic, did you always have it? Was that something you saw because both of your parents were servers and constantly
Yeah,
giving and they
yeah.
worked hard?
I think there's one thing I didn't mention. When I was 12, I had a really bad car accident in Canada, in Banff. You know, we were living in Hong Kong, but we went to Canada as a family. And one of our final days in Banff, my dad went hiking. You know, he's a big hiker, and me and my brother and my sister and my mum went whitewater rafting. So we did this. You know, it's 1990, and anyway, we're driving to pick up my dad, and our car just, I don't know what happened, but the car went off the road and down a huge embankment. And if I showed you a picture of the car, you'd be amazed no one died. It was an absolute disaster. And anyway, my leg was crushed and had 12 breaks in it. So I spent a lot of time in Alberta Children's Hospital, amazing hospital in Calgary. And this accident kind of shaped a lot of the next 5 or 6 years, because I just couldn't play soccer. Lots of operations. You know, it was fine, but I think that put me. I had a lot of time on my own. You know, a lot of time of thinking, why am I not playing football? Why am I not doing this? And I think it made me be good on my own, but it got me quite obsessed about things. So a few years later, I started playing golf, age 14, because I just couldn't play soccer. So we moved back to the UK, and I got my paper round, but I also joined a golf club, and it became, you know, I was obsessed by the equipment, you know, the players, the Ben Hogan notes, you know, of the perfect backswing. You know, I had to know every last detail about things, and I enjoyed that process. You know, there was a time when you could name any Masters champion, Woosnam 91, this player 92, this player 90. I just knew I'd never been there, but my brain could imagine it, and I had an incredible memory for shots and distances and all this stuff. So I think once I find what I'm into, I can be so focused on it. And at the moment, that's building the Shiller product and community and so on. But even back then, it was golf. And if I'm into something, I'm into it. You know, it's like, but you know, if my wife says, "Can you fill out a form?" You know, for a tax form, you know, I'll run a million miles. You know, I can't. My brain can't process that. I'd rather talk about Ian Woosnam.
Yeah, hey man, I'm right there with you. Watching Tiger Woods be Tiger Woods in 2000 was one of my favorite moments in sports, and it's just been, I love it, man. I love it. I got really into Penn. We went to Penn State college in Pennsylvania here. College football is huge there, so it sucked me in. But I think back to Matt's question, what's interesting is you've layered on both questions, and what you layered on this was that you are able to get hyper focused on something. And so not only showing up consistently, but focusing your time in the right places is absolutely key to doing the right things. Because, for instance, you know, we're a media company. We create content. You can spend hundreds of hours creating the wrong content because you don't understand the YouTube algorithm, and you just don't go down the rabbit hole of understanding how these platforms and how this process works. You can be the best creator in the world, but if you don't know correctly how to get your content to people, then what's the point? And you don't understand all of these different nuances unless you go deep on something that you love and are passionate about.
Yeah.
And so,
no, I totally agree. You know, anyone who's had any success, you know, of course, there's 1 in a million that gets lucky with something, but anyone that's had a success, you just look back over the years of when they first got into it, and no one was watching them, and they you know, I think they say it's 10,000 hours or something to master it. And there's definitely moments in my career where I was more focused than others, where you see the results. And
Let me ask you this and layer on a kind of another question. You talked about, again, some magical things. One of them being mentors or influences during that time, particularly not moments, but people. Anyone in particular, or people you'd like to talk about throughout that youth time period and lessons learned from them? And if you don't have an answer, it's no biggie.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of people that I met in Hong Kong, you know, who'd built. Um, I was always very impressed by people who built something, you know, from scratch, you know, whether, you know, and I think one person, you know, that I always liked was Richard Branson. You know, I liked his story. And I actually wrote to him a few times as well in my teens, and he wrote back. But I, I always respect people that have a go and fail a few times. I think the one thing about entrepreneurship in the UK is if you do fail, which I have, and we'll cover that in the next chapter. But when you do fail, society really slaps you hard.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think it's a conscious thing, but I think in other countries that gets really rewarded, and you know, because they see the value in the failure. But
Yeah.
I think there was certain people in Hong Kong. You know, and it was maybe slightly different, but you'd meet a lot of people in Hong Kong that had grown up against enormous challenge of like being immigrants or,
Right.
you know, trying to break through different sort of levels of society, you know. But for Branson, I like the way it was in a bit like Jobs in a way, but building new business models, doing things very, very different. But just that appetite for risk. And I think in hindsight, my dad actually always says being an entrepreneur is a curse. You know, he sees it like that, and I think he has reason to. But I don't think you choose to be an entrepreneur. I think a lot of people today are choosing that tag because they like to say I'm an entrepreneur. I work from Bali with my laptop. Yeah, it's a buzzword. But if I read a paragraph on what's an entrepreneur, I see my own DNA. You know, I am one, and there's been times in my life when I haven't wanted to be one, but just because it's so relentless on your brain, you know, and relentless for those around you, you don't realize the damage you're potentially doing those around you. But I would say certain individuals in Hong Kong that I met who just come from nothing and really gone against convention, which I always sort of respected in a way. And then Branson, I always thought as well, he was just such a maverick, which I liked.
Maddie, you know, the one thing that I heard, beautiful story, by the way, and I love, you're one of the few people that talk about how brutal it is on your mind, but also the people around you. It's very difficult, right?
Yes.
But one of the things, the first thing I'll take away, and I love your thoughts, Maddie, dude, you're in your teens and you're writing letters to Richard Branson. Not many teens do that, you know. You're writing letters to Liverpool. Like, that's very interesting to me, Maddie.
There's a caveat. So remember, listen, man, like we're a product of the 80s. There was no email, there was no web page, there was no social media. I mean, do you remember, Mike? Like we used to write letters. It used to be a thing to write letters to the White House.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was a thing, right? And if you had a fan or something like that, or if it was a sport, so we grew up outside of DC in Maryland, and the local baseball team is the Baltimore Orioles. And at the time, the superstar at the Orioles was Cal Ripken, right? He ended up going on to become Hall of Famer, known as the Iron Man because he played the most consecutive games more than any other player. It was a big deal when he broke the record. But like Cal Ripken was, you know, if you went to a game, remember, Mike, you could wait in line for 10 hours and he'd sign anything or whatever, but you'd write letters. I mean, it was a thing. Yeah. I wonder, I'll bet you now it's probably actually, to be frank, it's probably more powerful now than ever, because how many letters do you think some of these superstars actually get, or these clubs or whatnot? Because so many people are digital, probably means more.
Right.
You know, the other thing is the reason I used to write these letters was because Liverpool Football Club used to write back. Yeah. So as soon as someone writes back and it's a genuine letter and it's not just a template and someone signed it, you know, 14-year-old me was thinking this works. Oh, people are real, you know.
Right.
And what a feeling that is when you get that letter in the mail and you're opening it excited. I mean, it's like Christmas, you know. It's a really fun, that whole interaction with mail is something that we have we've really missed. You know what I mean? Now an email is like a chore. Somebody texts me, I'm like, oh, who is it?
I've got
letters are special.
I've got a lot of British friends that went to much better schools than me, and I noticed that, you know, if they go for dinner anywhere, they send a handwritten note to say thank you, and it's like the epitome of the well brought up Brits, you know, middle class.
That's
manners. It's manners.
Yeah,
manners.
Yeah,
it is.
And you know, that's kind of a lost thing these days.
And the other thing to layer on that is what it also taught you as a very young age is like things are possible, right? And it's not totally. Like Matt definitely took it in a direction that we should absolutely talk about, is just the day and age has changed. But whether it's an email or not, just when you're at that age, you don't think to, you know, email or write Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos or whoever it may be. That's just that's a mindset different than a normal 16-year-old, right?
But I think it's interesting what you say. So my dad had a church in Hong Kong called Kowloon Tong Church, and in the congregation were some big hitters. You know, there was the guy that went on to be, you know, running HSBC. You know, was in his social circle. So when I'm a 14-year-old meeting these people, these are like famous in the world of banking, but I also knew them socially. You know, these people would go for lunch with on a Sunday, and I think that gave me this desire to get to that level myself. Perhaps it gave me a bit of fantasy, you know, that. But then when I went back to Hong Kong, when I left Hong Kong and went back to the UK age 14, I wanted to be back in those circles, you know, and I did. Later in my life, I went back there and lived there for many years, and I got in those circles. I'll tell you about it in a second, but it was where I wanted to play. You know, these were interesting people, you know, and I wanted to.
Fascinating. I love it.
So good.
I love it.
I got one more question kind of in this area that was really interesting to me. You immediately made me smile when you said your superpower is connecting with people in a genuine way in a short amount of time. I literally tell that to people that I meet. I'm like, my superpower is connecting with people in a very short amount of time. Yeah. So from your perspective, I would love to hear what lessons, or it's not lessons, what principles do you use to apply that superpower? Because I think one of the, you know, AI's coming in, it's automating everything. As the world changes, Maddie and I are convinced doing genuine human connection, which we are doing right now, will be one thing that can sustain your career, you as a person in the business world. The other one is going to be being a creative. And then 3 will be leading people, right? Other than that, a lot of things are going to be gone. So I would love for you to kind of drop some knowledge on people that are interested in how you do that and things that you think about during that process.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you first explain this to people, they think you're some sort of, you know, con artist or whatever. But I think if I think about all my life experiences and my kind of photographic memory, it could be that I'm sat next to a plane with someone that's wearing, has a master's icon on their T-shirt, and I will say to them, you know, didn't Tiger do great last night? You know, or it might be that I hear somebody in a foreign language. You know, I had this really funny story. I'll give you a real life example of this. I was in Manila a few weeks ago, just for 2 days, and on the second day it was Easter time. So my parents' favorite hotel is the Peninsula in Hong Kong. So I went to the Peninsula in Manila, and I thought I'd go and have a glass of wine and take a photo of reception, send it to my folks, because it's identical to the Hong Kong one. And anyway, I go in the bar. There's no one in the bar. There's just the two waiters, and they're setting up for the Easter buffet next door. This is like a month ago. And this very tall guy walks in the bar, and Steve, his name. And he walks in and he said, "Hey, Kenny, can I just have the normal?" And I could hear in his tone, he's from Liverpool. You know, I just know because my dad's from Liverpool. So the question you ask someone from Liverpool is, are you red or blue? Is are you Liverpool or Everton? It's the question that says to someone, I know what you're about. It's like it's so the first thing you do is if you say, you red or blue, and this guy said to me he's red, and I said to him, I said me too. So anyway, turns out he got married in a pub called the Sandon, which is a very big Liverpool fan pub, and it's actually where the documents of the pub of the football club were signed, the founding documents of the club. And I know the guy that owns this pub now, Gary, who's from Dubai, who's also from Liverpool. I've been with him 3 weeks before this. So I said, you got married in the Sandon. I was just in the Sandon with my friend Gary from Dubai. So I got Gary on the phone. So I was, and we literally had a quick chat. But this was not to impress him. I was buzzing off the fact that that's how small the world is. And then he said, and I said to him, my dad is from there. He's from Daisy Road. And he goes, that's only a few streets where I'm from. I said, yeah. He said, you wouldn't believe it. My dad is a vicar. And he said, my dad's a vicar. And I said, rubbish. He said, no, my dad's from Liverpool and he's a vicar. And I said, my dad used to be an electrician before that. And he went, shut up. This is what my dad did. He said, you winding me up. So I remembered a guy my dad used to work with called Neville Black. And so I said to him, you don't know Neville Black, do you? And I've not said this guy's name for 30 years. It's just I had it in my database. And anyway, turns out he's good family friends with Neville Black. So from hearing an accent to being able to then say, and this was a freak moment, but then we ended up going out for a few hours, you know, and there was just so many things. So I think the first thing is being able to see something and then comment on it to a point where it distracts them and it takes do you know what I mean? It's like someone mentioning to you a player of an ice hockey team that you supported as a kid, and it takes you back. Yeah. And then that makes people they come out of this state that we're all in, walking around in this trance. Yes. If you go back to a point in time in their life or where they're from, more importantly, you've got them.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I love it because you just described why I think we have such success on this show is we literally start with what you just said, right? Who doesn't love recounting things that happen throughout their life that are interesting? And it's just amazing. Every week we get to talk to two new people that have these fascinating stories, and it just brings up such a great conversation. Man, you are, I mean, we didn't even know you about 35 minutes ago, and you are quickly approaching top 5 guests ever been on this show. You are killing it, man. So this is a great conversation. Maddie, anything before we go to episode 2? Yeah, because I want to make sure we get there.
Yeah, time-wise, I know we got to get to episode 2. I'll just say this one comment. I think it's also important for people to know, and anybody listening, is that so Mikey and Sam are good at this naturally. This is something you do. You hear a voice or you see something about golf, and you know, Mikey is a hunt. He will make friends with anyone, anytime, any place, anywhere. That's how he's always been. I've known him for 30 years. I'm not that way, right? And it's not that I'm confrontational. I'm just very analytical, and I like to study things, and I kind of quietly watch. So what I think is important is that I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. But one of the things he said is how
Snoop's favorite book.
Oh, is it?
It's a favorite. It's such a good book. And one of the things he said in that was that, you know, you have to realize that a lot of these things, even though you see and observe people have this natural talent, they are skills that can be learned. And by putting yourself in situations where you're forced to do it, you can learn it too. And so I would just encourage people. How I broke out of that was very simple. I went with an aerospace engineering degree, and I still got a job bartending because it forced me every day, every moment, every person would sit down, and I had to learn how to start a conversation, because that is how you live and breathe. You know, you don't make any money unless you can be a good conversationalist as a bartender. And it forced me into that. It took me 5 years of doing that on the side to feel comfortable with starting a conversation at random. Even though Mike could fall off a log and do it, it took me a long time to get there. And I just think it's important for people to recognize that. Don't hear something like this and think, man, I can't do that, so I guess I can't be this or be that. You
Right.
absolutely can. And I think that that's just an important takeaway. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. The ability to connect with somebody quickly, valuable, and going to be more valuable as time goes on.
Yeah. Any thoughts there, Sam, or we good to move on?
No. My only thought would be, it's interesting now how such skills that we have, and there's a lot of skills I don't have, and I'm very weak on, but storytelling it comes natural when you're telling the truth. It comes natural when you're telling your reality. You don't have to think about it. I've done no prep for this because I'm telling you everything that happened. Sure. Right. And I'm sure I'm missing out some of the best bits and worst bits, but I don't have to. I'm very happy to talk about it because it's my movie. I can remember it.
Right.
So, but it's interesting now how people are selling books in the airport that says how to be a storyteller. And I just smile at myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah,
that's awesome.
I love it. So let's move on. You got to university. You talked about, hey, listen, you already had your first kind of taste as entrepreneurship, building these paintings and being able to sell them.
Yeah.
Now you're moving into, hey, I'm gonna get a kind of corporate job. Take us through that time period and maybe level back up to some of those HSBC people that you were meeting in church that kind of swung back around, because that's interesting to us.
Yeah, so I finished my degree. I'd done my year in London, so it's the first chance to live on my own and work in this company, put a suit on every day, and it's great to just have that on my resume. So I was really proud of that. Then I did this art business. We sold a lot of paintings, but after the Manchester United event, we never were really. It was a one-off event, and the mistake we made was trying to build a company instead of just doing a project. And after the Manchester United event happened, I didn't have a business agreement with this co-founder. He put nothing into it. He was just a lawyer, basically, that, wanted a side hustle, but I was doing everything. And it all ended quite badly. And, as it was ending, I was very fortunate. I got offered a job at a university at Anderson Consulting, which was at the time the best job. They gave me £10,000 sign on and a good salary, £28,000 a year. And it was a great business card to hand out, and I handed out a lot of them. And however, when I joined, you got put into a start group of about 30 people, and the first thing they do is send you off to St. Charles in Chicago, and they put you on a training scheme. But they take care of your accommodation, your flights. You're surrounded by smart people who've gone to top universities, and I'd landed the best job in the UK, in my opinion. And however, I hadn't closed out my art business properly. So I'd be in training sessions and my phone would go and I'd have to pick up and say Artworks Direct, which was my art business. So I'm in this incredible career starting point with all these people very focused about being, and this was like a proper firm. And here's me still trying to sell art. And it was a lesson to me about close things out quickly. If they're not working, get out. And my dad had to come to my rescue at that time, and that it really got on top of me because I didn't choose to tell anyone how bad and stressful it was. We over-ordered on printing equipment, and it just was a stressful situation. And in hindsight, what I should have done is pulled the plug early, taken the wins we had from this art project, but I let it, I didn't decide, I didn't cut things off. So the first few months of me joining this amazing company were just overshadowed by this little startup, which I'd started in my bedroom with some global superstars. And anyway, but that was seen to, my dad was a huge help. And then I had a 3-year career Accenture. It was rebranded Accenture a few months later. So basically, the story here is you get moved around from project to project. Projects can last anywhere from 3 months to 2 years, you know. But I did a few projects in Europe, and but I got placed on this project called British Telecom. It was big telecom in the UK. And I was living with a girl at this time. You know, I was like early 20s. You know, I thought I was you know, super smart and all the rest of it. But I was quite junior in this big consulting company. And I joined a project in London, and this woman called Sarah Foster was my manager. Very, very attractive, confident, assertive woman. And I just thought, wow, she's impressive. Like, she would dominate a meeting. She's probably the most impressive project manager type person I've ever come across. She would take no bullshit. And anyway, I was on this project for 4 or 5 months. Didn't really socialize on the project. Had my own other circle I would socialize with. Anyway, I split up. Anyway, I left this project to join another project, and I split up with my girlfriend at the time. And I had I'll never forget, on a Sunday night, I had this dream about this girl, Sarah Foster. Really random. It was just, she was in my dream. So the next day I woke up and I thought, how weird. So I went into my laptop, got her number, and sent her a text. And I said, "Hi Sarah, hope you're well. This is Sam. I'm just wondering, I'm in London later this week. Do you want to go for a drink?" So no response for a few hours, and he got me a note back saying, "Hey Sam, good to hear from you. You know, good that you'll be in London. Who's coming for drinks?" And I said, "Just me and you." So I wasn't going to London, but I thought, I'm going to take this girl for a drink. So I went down to London. We went for a drink. And we went to a place called Sanderson Long Bar, and then we went to this other place called Sketch in London. And by the end of that night, I knew I was going to marry this girl. I've never ever had that feeling before. And so within 4 months we were engaged, and within a year we were married. So this was like this is when life, you know, I went from being, you know. It was and then I moved to London to be with her, and then I would end chapter 1 by saying that's when I moved to Australia. So 6 months after we were married, and she'd also grown up in Hong Kong. So I'd met.
Wow.
I'd met this girl who had very similar. She went to Hong Kong at the same age as me, pretty much. Come back from Hong Kong at the same age as me, and had this kind of reverse culture shock. And we'd met at Accenture, and it turned out we had so much in common, you know, and this is me who's good at finding things in common. She had so much in common with me. And I believe you should always try to punch above your weight, but I'm really punching above my weight with this one. And thankfully, I managed to convince her to become my wife. So my dad did the wedding service. We were married 19 years ago, and then we decided to jet off to Australia to get out of London and make a go of it somewhere else.
Dude, I mean, you just keep on dropping stories after stories.
Love it.
That was magical. You're just giving me chills, man. I mean, it's cool that you got to live that, but even for people to hear that, haven't experienced something so, you know, that's magical, man. Being able to tell that story is just impactful. I love it. Matt's smiling. I was smiling the whole time. There she is.
You see?
Nice.
Yeah, there she is.
Well, I'll tell you this. You talk about storytelling, and let me just say, I've heard some people who are very good at storytelling. And I know you just threw it under there by saying storytelling is easy when you tell the truth, and that, you know, it's your movie that you're sharing. But you're really good at telling stories. Let's just not undercut that. You got a good delivery there, man. You got the hook. You're telling us, I meet this lady. She's a superstar at work, and she's just the best project manager. And you lead into like little text, or I'm going to send an email. Let's go get drinks. I mean, I'm just saying, you nailed it. That you definitely. if it is a skill, you have well, it is a skill, and you have definitely gotten very good at storytelling. It's fun listening to this.
Awesome story. So I was episode 2, kind of you're in Australia, and that kind of gets us to the next phase. One question about the stories that you just told. You mentioned you're a firm believer of trying to level up. Where did that come from? Where did you get that mindset? Or is that just something you started believing at a younger age? I think it's an interesting mindset.
Yeah, I think it's just down to, don't settle, don't just put up with, something average. And even today, like with our product, literally today, I've been changing fonts and graphics, and so that we can make better with Shiller. And I think it's just not just tolerating something. And I think one other thing I was just thinking about was there was a downside to meeting all of these bankers and entrepreneurs and millionaires in Hong Kong as a kid, and I think learning golf, I'm sure you can relate. When you play golf 14, 15, 16, you occasionally play golf with a 65-year-old who you got nothing in common with, but you got to play with them for 4 hours. Right. So you learn quite good skills of talking to older folk, And I think I did so much golf, like literally played 2 rounds a day in the summer. And I just got to meet a cross section of people. And when I joined Accenture as an analyst, they would put me on a project with, British Telecom or Cable and Wireless or whoever it would be. And I would walk straight into a room and go and speak to the partner, because that's how I was trained by my parents. You speak to anyone. And I would go and say to the partner, "Where are you from?" Oh, and of course, because I can find connections with people, the partner of the client would say, "I live in this place," and I'd say, "I know someone that lives on this road." And it used to really piss off the guys at Accenture who were the partners in Accenture that you were getting on with the client. So it was not a good place for me. Like, whilst I liked the status it gave me and the quality of the work and that you were surrounded by bright people, it was not a good place for me, because I like to be able to navigate up and down. And they wanted to put me in a box, filling out spreadsheets, and you slowly work up to the top. But I wanted to be a partner on day one, which was never going to work. So after 3 years, I decided to quit.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same issue with corporate America, and I mean, listen, I was working on ad campaigns for company for Warren Buffett, met him. And when people tell me, oh, you can't talk to so-and-so because they have X title, I'm like, well, everybody bleeds red blood, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure they woke up and ate breakfast and went to the bathroom just like me.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense to me or compute in my brain. But great point as to another reason why that entrepreneurship mindset is kind of there, because I think honestly that's one of the biggest catalysts for me as well, because I can't think or be fit in that box my entire life. I will be miserable.
Yeah, so it got on top of me. I mean, it's perfect for my wife. She was very, very good in that structured environment. But as soon as we decided we're going to move to Australia, I said to my wife, or to-be wife at the time, "I'm going to do something different for our last year in the UK." And she said, "What's that?" I said, "Firstly, I want to live in London with you, and I don't want to be getting sent on projects. I don't like this company anymore." So I did a year doing something totally different, and I wanted to learn how to sell. And there's a company in London called Foxtons, and Foxtons sell real estate. And I applied to be at Foxtons because I love buildings. I've always loved houses and apartments, especially in London. And I thought, I've done my consulting stint 3 years. Let's go and now do something different. So I applied for Foxtons, and of course, I think when I applied, they were like, "What the fuck is this guy doing applying? He works for Anderson Consulting. He's going to sell houses." So I did that for a year, and they put me in Notting Hill and Holland Park branch. So you're literally selling some of the best houses in the country. And literally before we set sail to Australia, I just had this mad year of knowing I'm going to be in London every night. So we had a very happy time in London socially. But I got the chance to be around terrible salespeople, but a few really, really good ones. And I got to learn a few tricks. There's one guy called Priyan Damel, who was the #1 sales guy in Foxtons, a Sri Lankan guy. And this guy's figures were 5x anyone else in the company. And, I managed to say to him, listen, dude, like, how do you do this? And he said, I'm always the first in and the last out, firstly. I never do a viewing unless I've seen that someone's got the money in their bank account. And a lot of people in this office, they just want to show the big houses and hope. We all love hope. And he said, I won't even leave the office and get in my car unless I've seen a bank statement saying they've got the money. And if they have, I'll take them. But this is the answer. So that year to me was in a way, as it got me set up to enter my next decade of recruitment in Asia. That was a really important space, because in sales there's a lot of losers, and but if you can find a few winners, and they all leave kind of little trails of success. And I learned a lot doing that. And then we flew off to Australia. And which was 2004, and we flew to Sydney and landed in this beautiful little place called Manly, which is one of the most beautiful beach towns in Sydney. And that was the start of my career in recruitment. That was chapter 2, probably right there.
That's awesome, man. Take us through. You said 2 things about sales, and you picked up some more sales. Any other sales tactics that you had picked up over that period or over time? Because I think that's an interesting conversation. Things that you think about.
There's one amazing thing that Foxtons do. Foxtons was started by a guy called John Hunt, and they have offices all over London and actually all over the country now. But they basically hire young, bright folk who are very ambitious, and they charge the highest rates, but it's because they get the best salespeople. And they essentially sell houses. But on a Friday night at 5:00, you all have to be at the Foxtons office, and all offices in a division. We used to go to South Kensington. You drive down there, have a few beers before it, and at 5:00 there's a meeting. And there's like 300 people in the room, and they put up on the screen in reverse order the sales results of the week. And they say, David Smith, 22 viewings, 0 offers, 0 exchanges. And they literally work up. And the last one is Priyan Damel, 92 viewings, 32 offers, 12 exchanges. And the next week you realize that the 10 people who are at the bottom, you never see them again. They've been shot. They're out. So they might survive 2 bad weeks, but generally it's like, no, you're out. Your numbers are a joke. You're making no money. Goodbye. And what they do for the top sales guys is they bring them in new cars. They take them to Barbados. But it's totally about the numbers. It's like, how many viewings, how much money have you made, how many contracts are done? And it was 3 data points. It was viewings, offers, contracts, and I often think, when you meet companies, they dance around. They give you a lot of stories about, oh no, this is going well, and it's like, and I always think about these Foxtons meetings where it was like there's no hiding, and it was brutal. I saw very close friends. A friend of mine, Tom, he found himself down at the bottom of the pack, and he was, a week later he was out. He's a great guy, but he was miserable from a sales data perspective. And it didn't discriminate. You were just out. So I learned a lot from that. And maybe it was too brutal in some ways, but they were making plenty of money.
No, that's great insight, man. That's great insight. Maddie, any thoughts before we move on?
I love it. That's sales. I have been in that world myself, and it's just the way it works for sure. And I love that you said they just focus on the numbers, because when you do that, there's no favorites. You know what I mean? Here's what it is, folks. It's in ink. It's right there in front of you. And a lot of businesses that thrive are very good at just bringing it down to just an objective set. I will say knowing what numbers matter is important for any business, right? Because a lot of people will throw numbers around that are irrelevant. But to your point, yeah, the numbers that matter, if you just stay focused on that, it's the real deal. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Okay, so take us through highlights, because I definitely want to get to the tech, the Shiller, and all the Web3 stuff. I'm very interested in that. Any highlights kind of in the recruiting year days before we kind of get to Web3 tech entrepreneur in the Shiller story?
Yeah, sure. So we got to Australia, and Sarah Louise transferred. Sarah Louise, she changed. My name is so common, Jones, and her name's common, Sarah. She said, "There's no way I'm going to be Sarah Jones," you know. So she her middle name is Louise, but now her full name is Sarah Louise. So we moved to Sydney, and she transferred with Accenture, and I decided to take up a new job. I'd done some consulting, I'd sold some houses. I didn't want to do either of those anymore. But I wanted something with people and sales. So I went to see a bunch of recruitment companies in Sydney, and I met this one British guy that worked for this company called Robert Walters. And they had an amazing office down on Park Street in Sydney. It's one of the best streets in the best buildings in the city. And it's great to be around all these Brits. There's so many Brits that live in Sydney. And they pretty much offered me a job on the spot. And I went to see the recruiter about jobs in finance, not to be a recruiter. But the more I learned, there was a lot of people earning big money. So I said to Sarah Louise, you know, let's give it a go. So I worked for Robert Walters for a year, and I just had the knack. You know, I could meet people and very quickly work out if they were impressive or not. And then I would have a bunch of clients who were hiring, and I'd know. I could see who would like who, you know, because I could read people. So I worked hard. So I did this for a year. Then I got headhunted by a proper search firm, a guy called John Michelle, who he ran Sydney's #1 search firm. And I got a call. I went to meet them. Really liked John. He was quite a famous guy in Sydney. And I went to work for him. But I really fucked up. And that is, just before I left Robert Walters, I emailed myself a spreadsheet which I had created, which was of all my leads in the market, and I sent it to my personal email address. And I didn't think anything of it, but just as I was moving to John Michelle's company, to you know, which was an increase in pay and much higher profile positions and so on. Whereas Robert Walters is sort of more of a mainstream, lower level hiring. Still a great company, but this was more boutique and more money involved in the other place. Anyway, just at this time, we were about to have our first of 3 girls. Lila, you know, she was about to be born. Sarah Louise was heavily pregnant, and I was taking a couple of weeks out before starting this job. Anyway, suddenly the door goes in our apartment, and I open the door, and there's 3 people at the door from a law firm. And they said, "Hi, we're here because we think you've stolen some information from Robert Walters." I said, "What?" They said, "Yeah, can we go and inspect your car and your apartment?" I said, "Look, my wife's pregnant. What are you talking about?" Anyway, we inspected the car and the apartment. They didn't find anything. And I said to them, "Look, I'll tell you, I did send myself an email in my last few weeks." So I entered into a very messy court scenario where
Wow.
this actually got taken to court, you know. So anyway, it all got dropped eventually, but it was a bit of a warning shot, you know, that when you leave some companies, you know, it can piss a few people off. So that was a bit of a low point. But anyway, Lila entered the world, you know, and we had this. We bought our first house in Australia. And I started work at John Michelle, and I was surrounded by like 5 or 6 other very, very top recruiters. And I had some really good success in Australia, placing some big hitters into National Australia Bank and things like this. And they used to call me in the office the elephant hunter, because I was only ever interested in placing the really big guys. You know, I just gravitate. There's like, if I'm going to do this, let's shoot an elephant. You know, I don't want to shoot a weasel.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got this break, which was a woman from Deutsche Asset Management is part of Deutsche Bank Group. She rang me up and she said to me, Sam, could you we were doing a bit of hiring for them, and she said, could you come and meet me this afternoon? It's about a project. So I shot down and met her, and Pat said to me, look, we've got our head of the Asia business coming to Sydney next week, and he wants to meet some people. Do you think you could help? So I said, yeah, of course. She said, do you do anything in asset management? I didn't even know what asset management was. And she said to me, look, Ed's a bit unpredictable, but could you be on a call with him in half an hour with me? And Pat was the head of HR. And so I said, yeah, no problem. So we called Ed. This guy called Ed Peter called us on speaker. And she said, Sam, I will warn you, he is a little bit different, this guy. So we go on the call and he goes, hey, this is Ed Peter. And I said, Ed, it's Sam Jones in Sydney, recruiter in the market. He goes, oh, Sam, I'm coming to Sydney next week from Singapore. I want to meet the 3 biggest guns in the Sydney market. I said, sorry, what? He goes, I want to meet the biggest 3 guns. I said, what do you mean? He goes, no, sales guys. He said, show me the best 3 sales guys that you've got in Australia. I want to set it up. I'm coming in, funds management, sales, find the best 3. He said, I'm going to be hiring next week, Sam. You're going to make a lot of money if you get this right. So he hung up, and I said to Pat, is there a job description? And he said, I'm really sorry, Sam. No, just find 3 impressive senior guys from the world of funds management. So I basically spent 2 or 3 days meeting everyone possible to find out who are the best funds management houses, who are the best individuals. And I had this huge name, Ed Peter, to dangle, who had run Deutsche Equities in Asia. He was a very, very serious guy. Anyway, I lined him up to meet 4 people. And he came through town, and unfortunately I was leaving town that day to go to the UK on holiday, so I didn't overlap with him in Sydney, but I rang him from the airport on the way back to the UK, and I said, just as he reached the end of his day, and I said, Ed, how are the meetings today? He said, Sam, first guy, I'm going to put him in Dubai. I'm going to hire him to be the COO of this business. And the second guy, I'm going to have him work on a new project in gold, also in Singapore. And the third guy, I'm going to hire, for the Australia business. And I said, wow. Well, I said, what about the 4th guy? He said, fucking loser. He said, don't ever show me losers like that again. You'll get 3 strikes and you're out. That's 1 strike. So, and I'm not kidding you. This guy, Ed, hired 3 of the 4 people.
Wow.
And he said to me, listen, you need to come to Asia. He said, I'm in Singapore, and I work with a headhunter called Darren Kemp. He said, I'm going to connect you with this guy. He's the top headhunter in Asia. And so I had 3 magical years in Australia, but Sarah Louise and I decided, let's go to Asia, where we're both from as kids, but it's probably where we can get ahead a little bit, and Sydney's not a cheap town, but so we, and I met this recruiter, Darren Kemp, who's a wonderful search executive, making a lot of money, doing a lot of the big moves in Hong Kong. And that took me back almost to being a kid, where I was with all these bankers. So in 2007, I moved to Singapore. And I'll pause there, but me, Lila, and Sarah Louise, Lila, my daughter, we moved to Singapore in 2007, which was the top of the bull market. And we pitched up in Singapore to bolster Darren's office there.
That's pretty awesome, man. And I mean, just real quick, again, an amazing story, reiterating the dealing with a person like Peter, which, by the way, I love the voice acting.
Peter, yeah,
I totally can see this dude already.
Yeah.
From people like that are actually insanely successful. Maybe top 2 lessons or things that you were taught through that time period that you really cherish.
I think Tony Robbins talks a lot about matching. Like if somebody calls you up in a call center going, you got the hotel wrong. I paid you $4,000 for this holiday and everything's booked wrong. The worst thing you can do is talk slowly back to this person. Like you're better to say, I'm so annoyed. Like, let me try and fix this. Give me 30 minutes. I'm on it.
Ooh.
Like it's very important to try to equally. If my father-in-law calls me speaking very methodically about the weekend, the last thing he's going to want from me is me rushing through it because he thinks I'm scatty then. So I think whenever I saw a client like Ed, you know, my head is thinking he's one of the most successful bankers in Asia. He's screaming at me saying, hire people. For me, it was obvious to say, drop everything and fucking get over it, you know. And so I think you just try and gauge when people. This guy was very real and hired very quick as a result of the markets just blowing up in Asia in a good way. And I think that was the lesson. Just know when to. And the thing is, when you are elephant hunting, this guy was an elephant, if not a whale. But they don't come around that often, you know, and they don't come around when you think they're going to come around. So when they come around, and I had this with a few things I'll tell you in a minute on a few other projects, when the elephants come in, you've got to drop everything and grab the gun because or you'll miss it. So and these things change your life, you know. It changed ours. This one guy changed our lives.
Yeah, I love it. That's so good. Maddie, anything before we move on?
No, I love it. I think there was a lot of great lessons to extract from that for sure. And I love being able to hear the story. I mean, at the end of the day, you went for it, and it gives you a little bit of insight, being willing to, you know, strike where the iron's hot, even if that means moving, you know, following a new job. I think it was good that you mentioned the setback with the legal issue, because I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, that's part of life too, right? You get these bumps, and they always happen at the worst time. Of course, your wife's pregnant, you're taking a holiday, and then that's when these things tend to happen. But you emerged through it. You were honest. You told them what needed to happen. You made it work out, and you know, at the end of the day, you prevail. So I think that there's a lot of great lessons out of that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so we pitched up in 2007, and we had an office in Hong Kong and Singapore. So we were in Singapore, and Darren said to me, Sam, I want you to be our guy covering Asian equities. And I remember Googling what is equities. You know, I just didn't know what it was, and it took me a while to get my head around it. But he said, look, Sam, this is like so lucrative. You've just got research analysts, traders, and sales guys, and every bank has a load of them. And he said, you just do that in Asia. Trust me, this is good. So anyway, I started off quite well, made a few placements. This firm seemed like it was doing really well. It was part of a public company in London called Akamai Financial Markets. And unfortunately, in 2008, two things happened, which were massive. One is Akamai, this company I joined, turned out to be have no money, basically. They had offices in the UK, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, and it was like out of nowhere, we learned in a 2-week period, this company was going under. The public company was going under.
Wow.
So a few of the key people, Darren, a few of the others left. They went and got jobs in other places, and suddenly this company went into administration. So I was in Singapore with a young baby and a pregnant wife with number 2, thinking, what do we do now? And someone said to me, Sam, you should call the administrator. I said, what are you talking about? They went, try and detach the Singapore office from the company that's going under. So I rang the administrator up and I said to them, hi, my name's Sam. I'm in the Singapore team. I'm one of the senior guys. What's the situation? He said, look, there's a bit of money in the Singapore business, but this whole thing's going under. And I said, you know, what do you suggest? He went, look, if you want to make a bid, you could take the business. So in my mid-20s, I ended up buying the Singapore company from the public company. The public company fully went under, it went bankrupt. And I ended up having this office with about 6 or 7 people in it. And I took over the business. So, and I rebranded it and so on. And the company had quite a bit of cash in it and money owed to it. And we spoke to a few companies about partnering up, you know, Principal Search and a few others. And there's quite a lot of people from Hong Kong office that wanted to come and partner with me. Suddenly I had the cards. I had a company that people could put trades through, that they'd play, so suddenly I became quite an important guy, and I made a mistake in this moment in 2008 where I tried to build a recruitment company and hire people. So I spent the next year like hiring 7 or 8 individuals, but I went from being a headhunter, elephant hunter, to actually trying to teach people how to elephant hunt, and none of them made money. So I was now looking after a recruitment company and clients were like, "We don't see you anymore, Sam." So so this was going on, and then Lehman Brothers blew up in 2008. And they were a client of ours, but as soon as Lehman Brothers went under, the world stopped. Citigroup shares went from 80 cents to $80 to $3 or something.
Right.
And it was a really, really scary time. But what came out the back of that? This was like the first year and a half of being in Singapore. What came out the back of it was probably the most famous headhunter in Asia in the 90s and 2000s was a guy called Ranjan Mahwar. Ranjan Mahwar was the most powerful people broker in Hong Kong for finance. He'd made tens and tens of millions of dollars. And I got introduced to Ranjan, and we had a lunch together. And he said to me, "Sam, come and work with me. Give up the team. You don't need all these people. Come and work with me in Hong Kong. My office is in Jardine House, which is the best office in Hong Kong." He said, "Come work with me. The markets are going to come back and you're going to make a lot of money." So in 2009, we decided after 2 years in Singapore, let's drop everyone, all these people I'm trying to manage, all for my own ego. Let's go and work with a 65-year-old who'd done it. The guy had made millions and millions, and I became his right-hand man. And for the next 5 years that followed, we just had an incredible run in Asia, because all the banks started hiring again. Hong Kong's the heartbeat of the Asian markets, and me and Ranjan made out like bandits. And he basically taught me the art of how to be very, very commercial and not undersell yourself. And so we had this quite rocky first 2 years in Singapore, as we parachuted in, and the company went under, Lehman Brothers went under, tried to hire people and basically turned into a general manager. And then Ranjan came in and said, "Listen, he was a proven elephant hunter." And he said, "Listen, come work with me." So from 2009 to 2000, it's like 4.5 years, we did some very big moves, and I learned a lot from this guy. And I think to your question earlier, in terms of mentors, I get hit up now on LinkedIn by hundreds of life coaches. Maybe they're good, maybe they're not. But this guy Ranjan, he'd done it. He had a proven 30-year track record of making a lot of money, and he had something to teach me.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of these coaches always do. Some of them do.
Yeah.
But this guy, for me, like, he was good for my own personal career because he kept me. I was in the office early, he kept me disciplined, and without someone like that, you don't knowingly drift, but
Right.
I think without someone like that, it's easy to drift.
I love it, man.
Well said.
Maddie, anything? I got one question, and then we can move on.
No, go ahead and ask it. I want to make sure because we're crunching time, so I want to make sure we get to.
So last question, then we'll move to Web3 and Shiller and everything. I promise. How do you decipher, or I can't think of the right word, but how do you Ranjan, when you meet him, how do you think that comes to fruition? Is that because of networking? Do you feel like it's the right place at the right time, manifestation, culmination of all your hard work before? Love your perspective on being up, because that is a massive break for you, right? You now are learning from the best in the world or in that area that has propelled your career. How do you put your head around how that happened?
I think every time you enter a new, when I moved to Sydney, John Michelle was he's a very big name in the space, and I got called to meet him, and I met him and really liked him. And then when I moved to Hong Kong, it was very obvious when you deal with all the senior bankers. Ranjan had a massive reputation. All the bankers were a bit scared of him because he could rip out your best team. So as soon as I had him on my radar, I think I rang him up and said, "Look, my name's Sam. I work for this guy." He said, "Oh yeah, I've heard." I said, "Look, can I meet you?" And we just arranged to meet. So and then as soon as he said, "Let's meet," I flew to meet him. So it's currently 4:30 in the morning in Marbella. I'm only here really for one meeting, and I really believe if somebody says to you, "Come and meet," and you think they could be value, spend $200 on a flight. Because it says so much about you to them that you've turned up.
Man.
So I think
there it is.
I remember flying to Hong Kong, not really knowing how, but I only went for that meeting. I only went to London to see Sarah Louise, to see her for a drink, and I'm only here in Marbella for one meeting later today. But I think it's very easy, especially in this day and age. No one fucking goes anywhere. They send a WhatsApp, and it's not good enough. And of course, there's nothing worse than coming home after you've taken a bet on a trip and it was a waste of time. There's nothing worse because you've lost a day, you miss seeing your kids, you spent the money, But I think I've managed to work out when it's worth the bet.
I love it, man. And you did not give yourself credit to the theme that started when you were writing letters as a kid. You rung him, you made sure to reach out to him, and there's so many people that never do that. It's not that hard of a thing to do. And it's the hundred no's to listen, man, to have people like you on the show. I have thousands of people I've talked to, and I've gotten, I don't really care because your numbers aren't what we want, or you're not the right person. And I'm like, that's not going to deter me. And now look where we're at. We're having awesome conversations with people yourself.
So when I was in, listen to this one. So when I'm in Hong Kong, there's a very famous bank in Hong Kong called Standard Chartered, and we got invited. In 3 or 4 years into being in Singapore, in Hong Kong, I got invited to a charity dinner because they were one of my clients, Standard Chartered. I did a lot of hiring for them in equities, and someone said to me, "Do you want to come to the black tie dinner tonight?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Fantastic." So you're in a 5-star hotel. Amazing dinner with me and Sarah Louise, tuxedo, all the rest of it. And at the end of the dinner, they say, "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're going to have an amazing auction. We've got properties in Whistler you can rent for the week. We have wine from Bruce. We have blah blah blah." And they said, "And we also have 2 seats in the director's box at Liverpool Football Club."
Oh.
I couldn't believe it. So I rang my dad. I said, "Dad, I'm at this black tie do in Hong Kong. You're not going to believe it. There's 2 seats in the director's box." So he said, "Well, look, good luck." And there was no way I was not getting these seats. You can't get in the director's box. It's impossible unless you do it with an invite. So it came up to my chance, and I'm outbidding this Chinese dude. I would have literally bid. I wouldn't have stopped. And I ended up winning the 2 seats in the director's box. And Standard Chartered, the managing director, said to me, "All you need to do tomorrow, I'm going to email you and connect you to the head of sponsorship partnerships at Liverpool Football Club, and they'll take care of you. They're amazing guys." So the next day, I'm waiting for the UK to open up, and I get connected. I call them, and I get through, and I said, "Hi, I bid on this thing last night at Standard Chartered." And they went, "Oh, Sam, we know all about it. Thank you very much for the support. Do you know what game you'd like to come to?" And I said, "Manchester United at home, please." And they said, "No problem, no problem. You'll be in the director's box. Who are you going to be bringing?" I said, "My dad." And they said, no problem. Is there anything else you need?" And I said, "Could we get a parking space?" They went, yeah, no, of course, complimentary parking space. And they said, "Is there anything else you need?" And I said, "Is there any way my daughter could be the mascot?" And they said, "What?" I said, could my daughter walk on the pitch and be the mascot? And they said, no problem. So against Manchester United, my daughter got to be the mascot.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable, man.
But it had taken all these letters and all.
Yeah.
But as soon as I was on the phone to the right person, it just happened.
Beautiful
So
story.
she got to walk out with Steven Gerrard, you know, and she got to live my dream, and she's now a big Liverpool fan. So yeah. Anyway, in the process of being in Hong Kong in all that time, I basically learned that two things happened. Basically, I made a lot of money off a few clients who hired a lot of people. Deutsche Bank, Standard Chartered, kind of two big ones. But then this bank came to Asia called Jefferies, and they'd never had an office in Asia before. But they decided in the year 2011 and 12 to go after it in Asia. And because I stayed very focused on equities, and I was literally meeting 8 people a day in this wonderful little city called Hong Kong, I knew most of the killers, you know, most of the good guys in sales, trading, research. And I got a call one day from this guy I'd been helping out, a guy called Mike Alexander. And Mike worked for one of the best brokers in Hong Kong, CLSA. He's a very impressive guy. And I'd been helping him look at a few other options, so I got to build up a bit of a relationship with him. And he rang me one day and said, Sam, where are you? I said, I'm just at Jardine House in the office with Ranjan. He said, come down to the Hyatt. So I jumped in a cab and went to meet him. And I went and sat by the pool with him. And I said, he said to me, Sam, I'm about to take a job offer with this company called Jefferies. And I said, wow, you know, amazing. He said, Leah, look, if I end up getting the job, there's going to be a lot of hiring to do, and you should just get ready. You should just be organized, because if they come over, I'm going to put you in front of them, but you have to prove yourself that you're the headhunter for this. And I'd seen Ranjan make a lot of money from moving big teams around, but this was my first chance to do a big team move. So Mike basically then flew off to the US, completed the hire, and he became the CEO of Asia for Jefferies. Huge noise at the time. And Mike, you know, I owe him a lot really, because he gave me this opportunity to pitch to the global head of equities and the CEO, a guy called Richard Handler, who's still the CEO of Jefferies. And these guys came over to Hong Kong, and I had everything mapped out. I knew how big every desk was in Asia, how many people, how many MDs, how many directors, who the best performers are, who the biggest paying clients are. I knew it all, had it all mapped out beautifully, visually. And they came over, and I hit them so hard in the nose with this presentation. They just went, Sam, you got the mandate. So I said to my wife, look, this bank is going to hire 30 people in the next 3 months. I have to be here. So we decided I wouldn't have a summer holiday that year. And Sarah Louise went back to see the family and take the kids. And I stayed with the global head of equities and Mike, and we hired, I think they ended up hiring nearly 50 people. And I was in the middle of all of them.
Wow.
So it was another moment of it got the opportunity, you know, invested a lot of time to be credible, and then somebody like Mike, a bit like Ed, said, I want to go and do this. And as soon as you get that opportunity, just locking into it, and I became so paranoid about someone else getting it that I was almost obsessive. It was a bit like the golf.
Yeah.
So and that deal really made me in Asia. It's probably the biggest hiring spree that happened in a decade, and thankfully I was part of it, and that kind of put me into a new category where, and this is where chapter 2 ends. I then started to earn so much cash. I started to invest into technology companies, and I did get distracted. I almost got a bit fat and happy, you know, having done the recruitment. So many CEOs and founders come through Hong Kong. I started putting little bits of money into different companies. And I wasn't as on it as I had been in the previous 5-6 years. And that would probably be where this sort of chapter ends. From this crazy ride in recruitment, I was starting to get an eye for being a technology entrepreneur.
Right. Love it, man.
Love it.
The stories are just abound. So let's get to the Web3 tech. If we go through your tech story, we could go another 5 hours. So I want to be cognizant of your time. I know you have a meeting. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about, go ahead.
How about just any big takeaways from the tech phase? And if there's something you want to share, but we want to make sure there's time for Web3. Before Web3, but moving into tech, any big takeaways, any big moments that were defining moments for you?
Yeah, no, I'll walk you through it. So I basically, when I said to you just now that banks used to value me showing visually how other banks looked, I started to think about one of the things a lot of banks used to say to me was, what's the average person in Asia who's a managing director earning? And no one really knew. Everyone used to give these really lousy answers like 300 to 400 on the base salary and 700 to 800 on the bonus. So and actually Darren Kemp, the guy I spoke about a minute ago, he gave me the idea for this. He said, someone needs to build a technology product that marks people to market. I said, what did you just say? He said, someone needs to market talent. So I thought about it for a few years, and I ended up getting obsessed with this idea of, could you create a Bloomberg for people? So the first technology product I built was called Comp Index. And Comp Index, this is when I fully quit headhunting. I pulled out. I placed a guy called Philip Lee, who's the CEO of Deutsche Bank in Asia. He's the co-CEO of Deutsche Bank in Asia. And I decided that's the top. That's the biggest elephant around. I'm out. And I had this real desire to build a technology product. So my opportunity to do that was to go and build something that aggregated compensation data off all of the banks. So the banks give me a data feed, and then I show an average. So a bank can say, I want to see these 4 banks, and I want to see what's the blended average of people at this level in this function. We called it Comp Index. And I hired a group of people from New York who were masters of visualization. And we raised money. I had a very strong network of people. We raised, I think, $2 million into this company. And we went and built a product. And I think I got 12 banks giving us data, from Credit Suisse to Deutsche to UBS to really real banks. And we built this product called Comp Index. And we then started to do similar for diversity metrics. But I don't know, Comp Index failed. The company failed. Sort of 2.5 years into it, I think the reason it failed was we had a Hong Kong office and we got all these banks on, but in the 2 years that followed, we opened a London office, a New York office, and we were just spread too thin. We were trying to go after all the banks in all of these different countries and so on. So the product was very good. The business model wasn't really there. And also during this time, I had a full-on meltdown. I had a full-on burnout. And I think I don't sort of speak about this too much, but I think the reason I had a burnout was when I lived in Hong Kong, I got diagnosed with ADHD. And in hindsight, I should never have been diagnosed that. But my wife and I went to see someone, and they put me on this thing called Ritalin. And when I got put on Ritalin, I found that when I was starting this company, Comp Index, by Monday lunchtime, I'd done a week's work. I mean, like, my personality on Ritalin is incredibly productive.
Right.
It's manic. It's entertaining to watch, but now I was on these Ritalin tablets, and I started setting up offices in London and New York for Comp Index. And I started one of my close friends, Jez, he recommended that he said, when you go to London, you should take sleeping tablets. He said, because you're always on. So I started taking this tablet that you can buy over the counter in Hong Kong called Zoleaf. And Zoloft, basically, an hour after you've had it, you're out for 10 hours. So I fell into a really bad trap. And for about a year, I was taking Ritalin and sleeping tablets.
Yeah.
Beginning of day, end of day, beginning of day. And I ended up in a really bad space where I didn't realize at the time, but I was slowly losing my mind.
Yeah.
And I had a full-on breakdown.
Yeah.
This was 2014, 15, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the lowest point in my life, you know. So that company didn't end well. You know, that company failed. So, but worse than that, you know, my marriage sort of hit the rocks.
Yeah.
For a few months. Now, we lived apart for a period of time. I lost a lot of friends during that process because people don't deal well with the fact you melt down.
Yeah.
But I then started to build another product. So it was like it was a 4 or 5 month difficult time. But I'm very proud to say, you know, we got our family back together.
That's awesome. So
Yeah,
what I really appreciate you. I mean, that's a pretty intimate detail, and I really appreciate you trusting us with that. From this period, but then we'll get into Web3. What are the silver linings of adversity? Because I've went through crazy adversity. Maddie has too. There's a reason why we're called midlife crisis, by the way.
Yeah. We know all about
so
that.
We know
meltdown.
all about that. What is your perspective on hitting bottom and then trying to work back up? Are you thankful for that? Do you have thoughts about it? Love to hear that, and then we'll get to Web3.
And real quick, Mike, I'm going to step away. I'll be right back.
Yep.
Yeah, no problem. I think there's a couple of things. I think when you have a breakdown, which, you know, I 100% did, it cleans out a lot of shit that's in your life. You know, there's a lot of people who you thought were your friends during the high times when you're making a lot of money and you're quite influential in the job market and so on. There's a lot of people that want to be around that energy. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing to me as soon as Sarah Louise and I had this patch of, you know, things just got torn down. And then there was a lot of our family friends, couples, you know, that I thought were our friends that were just almost turned against. And I don't know if their marriage was fucked up or what, but I just saw a different side of them. But if I look back now, I'm almost grateful it happened because they were never really friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I think the other silver lining was there's a few friends that stepped forward during that time who I didn't realize, but were actually great friends all along. But there's like, but by the way, there's like less than 5.
Yeah.
And of course, then there's your family as well that you just realize were there all along as well. So I think it just, you know, in Hong Kong, I knew hundreds and hundreds of people, and it just very quickly reduced it to got rid of all the morons, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I love that, man, and I would piggyback on that. I went through a mental breakdown, and for other myriad of reasons. But the worst day of my life was also the best day of my life because it was the day I started healing. And that was when I looked in the mirror and realized the reason my life was so horrible was because it was me. It wasn't anybody else. It wasn't all the things that I was blaming, right? I need help and medicine and all of that. But when you get better, things of what is important in life becomes so clear, like the friends that matter, like your family, like not having, you know, maybe it does make sense to sleep a little more, not have a bajillion dollars, because if you have a couple million, you can still live a really cool life, right? You don't need 100. Some people do, but, you know, you really put in perspective what matters to you, you know? And I remember clearly writing down on my notepad what matters to me in life. And 3 things percolated, which was friends and family, freedom, and flexibility. So now how do I make all of my decisions based on that? And when you get that clarity, man, it's such a game changer, you know?
Yeah, so this was a really tough time. Lost a lot of good friends. Lost people who had invested. You know, they were annoyed we weren't able to scale the company, and
Right.
you know, it was a real. So it took me a long time to get over this loss. You know, I felt like I'd lost my identity, I'd lost
Yeah.
my friends for a period. But when we had our time apart, I just ran 10K every day. You know, and
Yeah.
you know, I just really simplified, just focused on the kids, and then, you know, thank God we were able to get back together and
Yeah.
make things stronger. But we had this simplification process, and then I went back to building products. So
Yeah.
I know we've got to get onto the other stuff, and there's so much to talk about still, but I went on to build product, which was, again, data visualization based, but it actually took more of a direction towards sports data. So I ended up being in the world of like the data that happens on a soccer pitch.
Yeah.
So built a company that would allow you to watch a soccer game, but make predictions over short periods of time and win points as things play out. So like fantasy sport.
Folding in a passion there, which is cool.
Yeah, no, this is really cool, and it's actually a lot of concepts close to Web3. This is now like 5-6 years ago, and through that company, I got to meet a couple of guys, Peter and Danny, who were the founders of a company called Wish in California, and Danny and Peter both had studied at Waterloo and had built this incredible e-commerce company that was selling about 3 million products a day. And they made me an offer to go and work with them. You know, and this was a unicorn at the time. It's probably worth $8, $9, $10 billion at the time. So I was now living back in the UK with my family, and this is 5-6 years ago. And so I went to work at this company called Wish that no one had ever heard of, but they wanted to really start to build a brand, you know, and tap into my ability to make partnerships with people. And so we went on like a 2-year rampage where we sponsored a lot of stuff, including the LA Lakers jersey, which was something I was managing. We sponsored Joe Rogan podcast. We sponsored UFC. We were Facebook, like a top 10 customer of Facebook globally, spending tens and tens of millions of dollars a month on ads. So I'd gone from being a very resourceful guy trying to get something off the ground to being in this 300 or 400 person startup that was valued at nearly $10 billion, that was very much biased towards engineers and didn't have any people like me.
Right.
So I just had a great 3 years working in this company, and as soon as you sponsor the LA Lakers, every soccer team on the planet wants to invite you to a game.
Right.
So I said yes to every invite. So
nice.
Awesome.
But this is so this is how I met Snoop. You know, because when the LA Lakers are playing, we had a lot of good tickets, and I used to trade them with. I used to say to the agencies in LA, listen, your famous superstars can take our courtside seats, but they've got to wear a Wish T-shirt. And this is something we started to do, and I'll show you one of the pictures. Yeah, this is one that was always quite good. This is Kendall Jenner sat at the Lakers wearing a $1 T-shirt. And so we were really trying to just tell the world that we were not a Chinese company. We're actually this American company. And one of the guys we sponsored during that time was this guy, Snoop Dogg.
Right.
So obviously Snoop is a huge Lakers fan. You know, in my 3 years of being at Wish, I got to get close to a lot of these celebrities, and one of the agents said, "Do you want to use Snoop for one of the games?" So so I said, you know, absolutely, we'd love to use him. How much would it be? And they said, you know, it's going to cost this amount. So we used him in the Lakers v Warriors game. It was on a one evening night, and we used Snoop to give away the match ball. You know, the Lakers would give us all these assets as their main sponsor. So we paid Snoop what was allowed, and the deal was he'd wear a Wish t-shirt. He'd turn up, wear a Wish t-shirt, wander around the court. We'd get a load of footage, and we'd use that on our social media to say, you know, we're a cool company. We deal with Snoop Dogg and the LA Lakers. Anyway, Snoop turned up 10 minutes before the game. You know, it was very stressful. It was like, where is he? We had a camera crew to follow us around. And I said to Snoop, can you just put the t-shirt on, the Wish t-shirt? And he said to me, I'm not wearing that shit. You put the t-shirt on. So I ended up putting this Wish t-shirt on, which is in this photo here. And I said, Snoop, but we'd agreed you'd wear the t-shirt. He said, listen, let's go down to the court. You record me chatting to everyone, and we'll turn it into some great content. So we go down to the court, and Snoop wanders around, saying hi to Jack Nicholson, speaking to Steph Curry, speaking to everyone on both teams. And I've never seen anyone in any celebrity circle so universally loved as Snoop. Regardless of age, gender, nationality, people love him. And I've never seen that level of authenticity so welcome. And so we basically did this really cool thing. As he went over talking to all these basketball players and having a little chuckle, we edited over with his voice where he was saying to these players, have you seen the price of ironing boards on Wish? And the guy would look shocked. So
Love it.
we took this real life example, and he talked about, you know, different products that he would get for his friends and Martha Stewart and people like this. So anyway, after he's done this little merry-go-round and we got loads of good content, we go to sit down courtside, and we're in these amazing seats, literally on the front row. And I said to Snoop, thank you so much. You smashed it. The CEO's messaging me going, that was amazing, brilliant, got to do more of this. And the game starts, and Snoop says to me, he goes, do you want to go up to my box? And I said, where's your box? We're courtside. This is the best seats in basketball. What are you talking about? He goes, no, my box is right up there, up the top. And I said, Snoop, why would we want to do that? This is the best seat in sport. He said, you can't smoke down here, can you?
We knew that was coming.
So so a real highlight of my career was sitting in a box having a blunt with Snoop, and which for an Englishman like me, that was pretty strong stuff. And but anyway, while we were talking, he said to me, you know, Sam, take my number. Let's talk about what we're going to do next. So we spent the next few weeks just talking about. I said to him, you know, what are you passionate about? Let's find another project we can do together. He said, Sam, I love dogs. I've got, I don't know what he said, 10 or 12 dogs. He said, I'd love to do something with dogs. So I said, listen, we've got nearly 1 million suppliers in China. Why don't we build your own range of dog products? So we started to talk about this with him and his people, and we did a few more media campaigns, and we never did the dog project, but you know, we formed a bond where we're going back and forth on ideas, and I think he could see Snoop's in the top 3 people I've ever met as a business brain, you know, and I think Ranjan in Hong Kong is one of the others, but Snoop is a phenomenal business brain, like off the grid, and his work ethic is probably the best I've ever seen. So if you combine those two things, it's no surprise to me why he's successful. He's phenomenal. And so anyway, I'll pause on Snoop there, but I'm gonna now jump to, you know, the current venture.
Yeah.
And so 3 years ago, when I was at Wish, you know, the company went public, and you know, all this great stuff, and I really felt again that, you know, being in a corporate was maybe not the best place for me, but I'd been watching really closely some friends of mine in China the last 5-6 years who were in the space of video commerce, and I don't know if you know what video commerce is, but in China, this is basically like QVC on steroids.
Yeah.
So this is.
Oh yeah.
So this guy here, he's making live content, and in the corner of the screen is a button, and on that button you can see what he's featuring, and you can buy it with 2 clicks. It's called social commerce.
The TikToks of the ladies like digging through beads to like take out a prize. It's insane.
Yeah. So because I lived in Asia, I knew a lot of the entrepreneurs who were behind these businesses, and it's basically TikTok, but it's shoppable videos,
Right.
and anybody can become a seller.
Yeah.
So you can sit in your bedroom and you can just tap into inventory, and you can just sell it, and the companies will send you samples. So I was getting obsessed about this in the last kind of few years, and I decided to quit Wish to build a company to do this. So 3 years ago, I started a company called OOOOO with 5 O's, OOOOO.com. And I did this with a partner of mine called Eric Zhang, who was very, very early in the team at Musical.ly in Shanghai. And Musical.ly became TikTok. So very, very strong DNA for video-based applications. Eric and I got together, met each other, through mutual friends, and decided to build this video shopping platform. And basically, we wanted to build something which was short video and live video, where creators could go live and sell stuff. And we raised some money. We launched the product in the end of 2020. We got to #1 in the UK App Store for something called OOOOO.com, and we onboarded all the biggest retailers in the UK, or some of the biggest, JD Sports, Boohoo, the Hut Group, big names. And in the last few years, we've licensed this tech to the Middle East, to Italy, to Brazil, and we've also we're about to do another deal into a big continent. And my kind of realization in the last few years is video shopping in China is very, very complex. There's universities where people learn how to become live sellers.
Wow.
And this guy I just showed you on the screen, in one day, he sold $1.7 billion of beauty products.
Billion?
Now, billion. Now,
billion.
You can Google it.
What?
Google Austin. Now, the global beauty industry in China, the global beauty industry in a year is a $500 billion business. Now that's New York, London, Paris. He did nearly $2 billion in 12 hours.
That's insane.
It's crazy. Now, the reason that happens is, firstly, China's got 1 billion people, or over 1.4.
Right.
The second reason is because people are making content in their homes, and it's so competitive as to who's the best live streamer. People don't give customers any BS. They stand on the side of the customer. They tell people what's good and what's not. So it becomes like a form of entertainment, like a podcast. And so the dwell times in these live commerce shows is very high. And because you can click a button on the page, the conversion rate's also very high. So you get this huge industry. It's a $400 billion business in China. So anyway, we've spent the last 3 years building this stuff. But the problem is, in the UK, they don't have universities about how to become a live host. They don't have media companies that teach you how to do live streaming. British retailers are miles behind. They don't even have Wi-Fi in their office in some cases, in their studios. What? So we built this technology. We learned how to do it, but then we realized it's better for us to license it. So we've licensed it to, as I say, these countries I mentioned. And really what we've been thinking about in the last year is, what are the niches that have existing community? So there's a great company in the US called Whatnot. And Whatnot is in the space of memorabilia, comics, Pokemon, this type of stuff.
Right.
And what Whatnot have done is they've built very similar technology to us, which is live shopping video. And Whatnot have built this app that basically ties together all of these people that used to gather at conferences for baseball cards or memorabilia, or people that gather on YouTube or Instagram, but then transact on eBay. And they've pulled everything together into one app. And so this is an example of a niche where I believe in the West, video commerce will be huge. So we started to look at, how can we use our technology of OOOOO? How can we use it in a vertical that's got existing community? And an example of that could be watches. People who sell secondhand Rolexes for $30,000. People watch this type of content day and night.
Yeah.
Secondly, wine. People are obsessed with watching live video of wine, whiskey, cycling, golf.
Craft beer, baby.
Craft beer.
I love craft beer.
100%. Yeah, you could do a craft beer one because people, it's a community. It's an existing community. So, so we started to. I started to speak to Snoop about, in the last year about what's happening in digital assets. He's become quite a famous BAYC holder. And I said to him, one of the problems with doing video shopping is you've got to send the shopping. You've got to send the shoes. You've got to send the T-shirt. You've got to send the watch. Sometimes it gets stolen. Sometimes it doesn't fit. Like, you go through all of that stuff. And in China, there's over 1 billion people. You can ship lipstick from one end of China to the other. You can't do that from Poland to Spain to the US to Japan. So we came up with this concept of what if we could do video commerce where people were selling digital assets, selling things from OpenSea, from Rarible, and so we started digging into this. This is literally like a year ago. And we started listening to Twitter Spaces. And when you go on a Twitter Space, it's basically loads of people on an audio. And the only problem is there's no video, there's no tipping, you can't sell anything, and you can't token gate. Meaning if all the Pudgy Penguin holders want to speak to one another, you get all the other morons with it who aren't Pudgy Penguin holders. Sorry, it's getting late. It's getting a bit of a tongue twister.
That's all right.
So, but I noticed something else on these Twitter Spaces. I heard people saying at the beginning of shows, no shilling on here, people. We don't want any shillers. So I said to someone, what is a shiller? They said, you can't sell anything. I said, what the fuck? How can, this is the way the world works. People promote their stuff.
Good vibes only, man. Good vibes only.
So I said to someone, we're going to call this company Shiller. So
I love it.
So we basically got a few people together and we said, we've got the technology, with OOOOO, but we need to change it. We need to make it that you're not selling shoes and sneakers, watches and clothing and beauty products. You're selling digital assets. So we needed to build a technology that plugged into OpenSea and others, Magic Eden and so on. But we also needed to make it that if somebody like a musician was going live, they could create on the platform a DigiPass, which was an NFT, which was a ticket to that event. So basically we're selling thin air. And we also need to build something which is token gating, which allows you to say the only people who can watch this are people who hold the DigiPass or people who hold a BAYC. So since last May, this is exactly what we've been doing, and I have sort of two focuses in my life. One is the video shopping platform OOOOO, which is something we license out to companies, and that's a very mature piece of tech now. And a lot of my time now is focused on Shiller, which is essentially a global platform for people to create content with a digital asset sat behind it. So we've got a team of Shiller of 7 in China. We've got 3 others. We just literally hired a head of music who's 20 years in the music industry. And then we had a bit of a blind spot as a company in Web3. We just didn't know anything about, smart contracts and Solidity devs and all this. And I really felt it was risky hiring people full time. So we've partnered up with one of the most famous houses in this space. And the Shiller platform will launch in about 2 weeks. So and Snoop is a co-founder. So he really understood this concept. He believes very passionately that this needs to be a creator toolkit where creators can set their own terms. And through a smart contract, a creator can do just that. They can decide where the revenue goes if they make a show that has a ticket against it. So I think it touched a few nerves for him about, how does a creator stay on top of the commercial discussions? And obviously it's just wild to have him as a business partner. He owns a big stake in the company, and had I not have done the Wish stuff with him and sat courtside with him, I never would be sat with him now as a co-founder building this venture. So,
dude, What yet again another amazing story. You can just go on Shiller and tell your life story and people pay you money. Um
I love it.
so with all of that, just a couple questions and then we can kind of wind it down. It's launching in 2 weeks. What makes your platform different than a Twitch or a YouTube where you can do that? Is it really the e-commerce side and the Web3 technology? Why Web3, and are you bullish on that? Give us a little insight there.
Well, I was at Consensus a few weeks ago, and if you wander around Consensus as I did, and I looked at every stand as I did, there's still a lot of technical jargon and interfaces that look like they were built by super smart engineers, but then the space needs a Tinder style interface. So our desire for Shiller is that it is a mass market tool, where we've got sort of mass adoption. However, I do want to start in the Web3 space. So phase one for us at Shiller is going after, number one, key opinion leaders that are showing up on Twitter right now. And what we can say to people like this. So, for example, someone who looks and sounds like Rug Radio, what we can say to people like this is, on Shiller, you can do audio or video. You can token gate the content. You can put products on there from your own e-commerce store. We charge you nothing for that. So you just promote your own stuff whenever you want. But it's also got tipping. So if people want to send you virtual gifts, apart from Apple and Stripe fees, we take nothing on that either. But you can also on platform create these digipasses. So the first group of people we're targeting is people who are making content a bit like you guys, from your bedroom, from your studio, from your office, influencers or content creators or key opinion leaders. The second group we're going after is projects. So going after somebody that's got a community of holders. I think what we can offer them is, again, video or audio, but token gating, so they can speak directly to their holders if they want to. It can be an open chat or a token gated chat. But also giving them a commerce tool is very valuable, and we don't take any cut from that. The reason we've just hired somebody in music is, I think music is a great bridge from Web3 music to mainstream music, where we'll eventually allow mainstream artists to use some of these tools, which we will not call smart contracts and wallets and all these confusing terms which will scare them.
Yes.
So I think in the next 12 months, sport and music in the mainstream will be super interesting to us, but the terminology will reduce, and it will be less Stanford and more kind of normal language.
Gotcha.
And then, so that was so the reason why Web3, I think, I'm fascinated when I go to these conferences. It's 10 years ago, people used to want to be at a Google campus, with a pool table and a buffet where they don't have to pay anything. I think that joke's over now.
Yeah.
I think what people are trying to do is get a nomad visa and travel around the world and gather, be at Miami next week, go somewhere else 2 months later, maybe go to 4 events a year. So I do believe this community is global, it's cross-border, and because we're selling digital assets, that's also, you can do that, you can genuinely do that globally.
Yeah.
So I think, and then secondly, I really like on the whole, I really like the culture. People are very smart, very hardworking, and they're looking to build new stuff, and I don't think this space is going away.
No.
I see a world where we'll turn up at every event and we'll film the whole thing.
Yeah.
So if you want to go on Consensus, just go on Shiller and we'll interview people, do a 12-hour show, live.
Right.
I think that's where it's going to go for us. But
so a couple things. One, we're a Rug Radio affiliate, so it's funny that you bring that up. Two, that solves the problem for someone like Rug Radio and Farouk that has hundreds of thousands of followers. How are you solving the problem for small creators that are trying to build a following? Because if I'm token gating my content and I only have 100 followers, that's not helping me.
Yeah, well, firstly, there's actually three types of token gate that we've identified. The first one is no token gate, so you go live and anyone can watch it. The second thing is anyone can watch, but the only people who can comment or interact to buy are people who hold the token. And the third one is it's only literally for token holders who can get in.
Gotcha.
So the second thing is Eric, who was previously Musically and TikTok do something that's very genius, and that is if I make a TikTok and I share it with my mum doesn't have TikTok, but she can still watch it on the browser.
Yes.
OnlyFans did something very similar where they drained lots of users off Instagram and Facebook just with a HTML5 link where you could watch on the browser. So we make it very easy for people to make content and share it outside of the app with a deep link that pulls people back in to download the app. The other thing is, if you're an emerging, let's say you're a kid in Nigeria and you research hours and hours about crypto and NFT projects, and people start to notice you. We've built this tool with virtual gifting where it allows you to send someone $1 or $50 or anywhere in between. There's 20 values in between. And I think that's a way, we call it giving someone their flowers, and there's a phrase people use. But the good thing is if people send this kid $3 or $4, you can see in the app over 1, 2, 5, 10 days, you can see who's earning the most. So this gives you a leaderboard, which starts to show who is this kid, that people are watching. Yeah. And you can then watch the video that he made yesterday. Mm-hmm. So, and eventually good quality should rise to the top.
Right. And the benefit from a creator perspective is, I'm assuming you're taking a less cut because, Twitch screws you, right? They take a 70% cut, I think.
Yeah, we're not about that. So we're certainly in the early days, Apple will take 15% and then that will go up to 30%, once you hit a certain level of revenue. And then we charge, Stripe charge us when you cash out. We won't make any money on the tipping. I don't believe in it. We'll only make money when someone says, I'm going to make a DigiPass for some live show I'm going to do. We'll take a percentage of that, maybe 10%, something like that.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we have to cut right to the bone on the numbers because creators speak and they're going to say, this is how much I earn on Shiller. Right. And this is also something Snoop cares about. He wants people to be paid fairly.
Awesome.
And
that's good. So Maddie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I have two questions. I'd like you to explain this to two different audiences. In elevator pitch style, if you were talking to a creator, someone who is trying to make it in Instagram or YouTube or TikTok, why should they be interested in this product? And if you were to, but they've never heard of it, what's like if you met me in an elevator and this pitch was there and I said, yeah, I do YouTube content. You're like, yeah, well, let me tell you about Shiller. What would you say?
So bear in mind it's 5:20 in the morning.
Correct.
But what I would say to them is if I was in the elevator, I would usually whip out the phone from my pocket and show them the Chinese guy. And I would say, this guy used to earn $9,000 a year in a shop. Last year, he did one show that earned $1.7 billion. And at that point, I get their attention. And then I say to them, Shiller is a platform that's live audio, live video. You can sell anything, digital assets or real products. It has tipping, or you can create your own token. It's totally free. And I'd love to talk to you about it. And that would be pretty much. So I show them something visual. I'd show them something that's real, like this guy, Austin, with a data point. And I'd tell them all of the different things that they could do with it. And then I would probably say a few of the other people we've got involved, including Snoop Dogg. And at that point, when I hop out the elevator, they usually get out with me.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic. And I'm going to clip that, and the B-roll I'm going to use is going to go over top of that with Snoop Dogg, and I'm going to show, what's the gentleman's name that did 1.7 billion?
Austin Lee, spelled L-I. You can just Google Austin Lee 1.7 and you'll see it.
Oh, it's happening. Okay, we're going to make that. And then the next audience is this, the regular, just everyday person, right? They're not a content creator. I'm sure you bump it. Well, you have conversations all the time, right? Just like the guy you met from Liverpool at the bar. So what do you say this is, when you say what you do and what Shiller is to your average, just, you can't talk Web3 terminology. What do you say you do?
If it was just like an average Joe, right?
Yeah, an average Joe, somebody that's not in Web3, they're not familiar with blockchain, they're not going to know the lingo. You know, but they've heard, of course, of these other. They've heard of YouTube, they've heard of Instagram. What would you say?
What I would typically say is I would give an example of someone like Ed Sheeran. So I would say, using this tool, any musician from someone in their bedroom to Ed Sheeran can point and shoot and record themselves, and they can create it as a ticketed event. And in that ticketed event, they can charge for that ticket from $1 or $50 to get in, and they can decide if there's 10 tickets or 1,000,000 tickets. And with their thumb, they can control where that revenue goes. So I wouldn't use the phrase smart contract or NFTs. I would just say, look, it's a ticket. It's like pay-per-view. It's like OnlyFans without the breasts.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
You know, however, on OnlyFans they take 33% of everything.
Yeah.
On this, we'll probably take 10 of the digipasses. But importantly, the creator gets to say, my agent's going to get this. And by the way, I think agents are going to love this because they can. There's no messing around. Everyone's aligned.
Yeah. I love it.
I like it.
All right.
Very cool.
I can tell we could go on for another 4 hours. I want to do this. We have one final question that we lied. We actually asked like 2 real questions. We will end it with that. Before that, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about what does the next year for Shiller look like, and any final thoughts about your product before we close it out.
I think we've just identified the first 20 OGs on Shiller, and it's a really magical stage we're entering for the next sort of 60 days, and that is where these 20 people get to make content and watch content in the app, and they start to be able to think of it as their own. So people can make live audio shows, live video shows, and we're all in a group together, giving each other feedback and encouraging one another. And then the developers will sit there like hawks, watching how they're using the app and what features they said it would be really cool if we could do this, and really cool if we could do that. And there's going to be a couple of golden nuggets that come out in the next 4 weeks, and the guys will build it rapidly. So that further enhances the feeling of that it is their application. So this is the first thing. Then what we'll do is we'll increase it to probably 50 to 100 creators, OGs who are in there, and just copy and repeat that process of trying to get it so it's perfect. The app is already very strong, but getting it so it's perfect. Then you get this effect where these people start to drag over their followers from other platforms, and at the same time we'll bake in quite a lot of our own content, such as a series of showing up at all the major events and making content, wandering around all these events and so on. And then once we've got like 90 days of data, how many people are using the app on a regular basis, what's the average show time, what's the conversion rate, what's the average amount of tips, once we've understand that stuff, we will then start to spend money on kind of growth marketing. So advertising, but also quite a lot of mechanics, such as if you recommend 5 creators, we send you a ledger device. So rewarding the community for growing the community.
Yeah.
So it's basically going to be that type of stuff, and we've then got to think about how music comes into it and how we use some of the people involved, like Snoop, in a way to help the company. But it's a really exciting phase.
I love it.
Love it.
Maddie,
it's cool.
I'm going to close it down here, and we're going to close it down this way. I'm going to ask this question. We're going to say our closing comments, and then we can part ways on the show. And then just want to talk to you after the show real quick, couple minutes, shut it down. So when we go offline, we'll just stay on Discord, but no one will be able to hear us. And this last question is this, very simple. Don't be stressed out. You just spent, believe it or not, 2.5 hours starting at 3:30 in the morning on the Midlife Crisis Show. You've been in hundreds of Twitter spaces. You've done a lot of these things. How do you feel like your time on the show tonight went compared to other things that you've experienced?
No, I mean, I think the last call I was going to do with you, I was in China, if I'm not mistaken. I was in Shanghai, so. And I'd not been to Shanghai for 3 years, and I had to cancel it, and I felt really bad on it, and I'm really pleased the way you responded in that moment. You sort of said, "Listen, we take these things serious. You can't do this." So I actually respond well to this type of response, because it shows me you're professionals, and I think. No, I've genuinely really enjoyed it. I'd love to have a beer with you guys, but it's actually felt like that. You said it up front, and I thought, what a load of rubbish, but it's actually felt very intimate. I think you're both very good listeners, and I think really good questions. But I've never at all felt rushed, and I think the fact I've been willing to talk about certain things I never talk about, such as business failure, court proceedings, failed, but marriage breakup, marriage reunion. These are like, it's quite heavy at 4 a.m. in the morning, considering we've not done any drugs and I don't know you. So
True.
That feels good.
So no, it's but it's a form of therapy, and I'll await the invoice. So.
Listen, the Midlife Crisis Show is the drug, my friend. You found our secret. No, man, those awesome. Are incredibly kind words. When we set out on this journey, that's exactly what we were looking for. Hey, listen, it's not the sexy sizzle of we're not going to show you and tell you can make $100,000. We're going to treat people kind, tell real stories, and we think that wins out in the end. So for someone like you, with your status, the things that you've been through, to feel that, that's its weight in gold, man. Really appreciate it. Maddie, you can say your closing comments. I'll say mine, and we'll call it a night.
Sounds good. Yeah, this has been a fantastic conversation. I mean, you've taken us through a journey, and ultimately, and I'll break it down quickly. For me, you've acquired a tremendous amount of skills because of the life experiences that you've had, both the good and the bad, right? And what I think is interesting is that you've taken those, you've always built on them. You've been willing to go wherever you need to go to get there. And one of the things you said that really resonated with me is that as an elephant hunter, you don't get those often, and you have to be able to recognize them when they're there. And you are sitting here, you've gone from opportunity to opportunity that most people would think like this was the lifetime opportunity I'm going to get. And you've still leveled up from each one, culminating at courtside seats with Snoop for Wish, wearing a t-shirt, hanging out, in his box, having a good time. And what's amazing to me is if you can go from that, and with all of your experience with recruiting and tech, and see the opportunity here with Shiller, it speaks volumes to me. And the reason I told you early on that I think it's important when you get to know somebody's life and their past, it lends so much credibility to what they're doing now. Not knowing who you are, I would hear Shiller and I wouldn't be sure that is this another gimmick? You know what I mean? Is this something there? But for you to go from where you've gone to believe in this enough to stop what you were doing, I mean, you've made money you've done, you know what I mean? To do this, it's clearly something you're passionate about. And you started by saying you have a habit of falling into a very almost laser focus when you're into something. And I can tell that this is your passion. This is your project right now. And I just think it's really, really cool, man. Learning who you are gives me a tremendous amount of confidence that this is something that we should keep on our radar. And quite frankly, to speak, transparently, Mike and I are creators. And so when you talk about these type of opportunities, you have our attention too. And so you're doing what you're saying is right because you have our attention. And so I know that you're obviously getting everyone else's attention as well. And it's just been a pleasure talking to you. I really hope we get to continue this friendship. And I hope we do get to have beers one day. So I thank you so much for the time. I know it's really late for you, but I really
No,
appreciate
my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
it.
I'll add Maddie always does a great job. Couple things. One, I told you we built a friendship online. That has absolutely happened in my mind too. I love talking to successful people like yourself, but still know that you're a human and a good-hearted person, because I think a lot of successful people get villainized because all they do is chase money. And you were real. You broke down some really incredible things to us, and I can tell you're a good human because of that, because the fake people would not do that. So I appreciate your vulnerability. It's really hard to do, especially for two random dudes in America that you never met.
Yeah.
And then 3, you are what Web3 needs. And Maddie and I are convinced Web3 needs us too. And what is exciting is that as this space evolves, the Shiller stuff, because even, I mean, let's be honest, Snoop's name has been tossed out there in Web3
Yeah.
with projects that were technically rugs, right? And so because he was an icon, right? And that is going away so quickly because people like yourself that are good and genuine, that have the right intentions, are trying to use the technology to build it correctly. And I'm excited. We know you, we're a part of that, and you're trying to build that, because that's what we ultimately care about, is doing it the right way with the right people. And you are one of them. So thank you for the time, and thank you for doing what you just did at 3 a.m. in the morning. I appreciate it, man.
No problem. Listen, just as you were talking, I remembered something. There's an amazing video I saw on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw it. It was like at an event, but it was a staircase, and the guy kept walking up a few stairs and falling off, and he hit a mattress and sprung back up, but he landed on the next step. Did you see this?
Yeah, I've seen it.
And he did it like 10 times, and then people realized the guy's moving up the staircase, but he fell off it probably 8, 9 times, but he kept bouncing back up, and by the end of it, he's at the top.
Yeah.
So I think the for all these entrepreneurs that want to buy the 30-minute podcast to teach them how to be entrepreneurs, unfortunately, and I'll say this to my own kids if they want to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have to fall down. And now I know how hard it was for my mum and dad watching, this kid terrorize his mind to build something. Right. When you fail but it's but hopefully if you can get back up, and it is that's the hardest part about restarting if you do fail. But if you can get back up, you've got a new weapon in your pocket, because of it. But it is very, very tough. And but resilience is a major asset. It's one of the best assets you can have.
Absolutely. And thank you. Perfect way to close that out. Amazing final thoughts too, Sam. We freaking love you all. We'll be back next week. It was an incredible first night back. You all are the best. Midlife crisis.